What happens when a mother gives everything for her son's wedding, only to be left off the guest list? The truth comes out in a way no one saw coming. Elaine Foster awoke before dawn, sunlight barely pressing through the curtains of her modest apartment. The city outside was still and gray, a quiet contrast to the anxious flutter in her chest. Today was a day she'd been waiting for, the day her son, Eric, would collect the last check for his wedding. Elaine brewed herself a pot of strong coffee, her hands trembling ever so slightly as she poured, and carried her mug to the dining table, where a stack of glossy wedding catalogs and receipts waited. Elaine had always dreamed of this. As a single mother, she'd raised Eric on her own since his father left, scraping by, saving every extra penny, tucking away small bills into a velvet envelope in her nightstand. Years of foregoing vacations, dinners out, new clothes. She'd told herself it would all be worth it, one day, when she could give Eric the gift of a beautiful wedding. It was a promise she'd made the night she found him asleep after his first heartbreak. "One day, sweetheart, I'll give you the best day of your life." Eric had found Olivia during college, a whirlwind romance of study dates and long phone calls, the kind of young love Elaine hadn't seen since her own youth. When he called to announce their engagement, Elaine's heart had leapt. "Mom, will you help us?" Of course she would. She insisted on paying for the venue deposit, the catering, even Olivia's dress. Every week, she cut another check, each one a symbol of love and pride. That morning, Eric texted, "Can I swing by at 10? Olivia wants to go over the florist invoice." Elaine texted back an eager yes, then spent an hour cleaning, dusting family photos, arranging flowers in the vase she hoped would someday sit on their head table. Eric arrived with Olivia in tow. She breezed in, all energy and lists, her smile practiced but polite. Elaine greeted her warmly, offering pastries and orange juice. Olivia accepted, but her eyes were already on her phone, coordinating with vendors. Eric seemed tired, distracted by the growing pile of details. Elaine handed over the latest check, watching as Olivia snapped a photo and texted it to her mother. "We're almost done, thank goodness," Olivia said, voice light. "You've really saved us, Elaine." Eric hugged his mother, the gesture hurried, distracted. "Thanks, Mom. I'll let you know when we get the seating chart back." They talked through the vendor contracts, Olivia's voice leading, Eric checking items off. Elaine asked gentle questions about the ceremony, the music, if Olivia's family would be coming in early. Olivia answered quickly, already on to the next task. Elaine offered a suggestion about flowers, white peonies, Eric's childhood favorite, but Olivia shook her head. "We're going with roses, it's just simpler." After an hour, they left, promising to update her as plans firmed up. Elaine watched from the window as they hurried to their car, shoulders hunched against the cold wind, Olivia's laughter drifting back up to the apartment as she dialed her own mother. The day stretched out, lonely and quiet. Elaine sorted through receipts, making careful notes of every payment. She called the caterer to confirm the menu. Her check had cleared, everything was on track. She lingered on the phone, listening to the caterer's stories of weddings past, imagining her own place in the joy to come. That afternoon, Elaine walked to the seamstress to check on the alterations for her dress. She'd chosen a soft blue gown, elegant but understated, one she hoped would let her blend in among Eric's and Olivia's guests. The seamstress fussed over the fit, complimenting her choice. Elaine felt a quiet pride. She wanted to look her best for Eric, for the family photos she'd dreamed of for years. On her way home, Elaine stopped at the bakery and ordered a small cake for the rehearsal dinner, a private tradition, just her and Eric. She wrote his name on the order slip and imagined his face lighting up when he saw it, as he had every birthday since childhood. Evening came. Elaine made dinner for one, chicken soup, toast, tea, her phone silent on the table. She reread Eric's old texts, let her mind wander to the life she'd built for him. As she readied for bed, she set her phone on the nightstand, hopeful for one more message, an update, an invitation to join them for a tasting or a walkthrough. Sleep came slowly, a mixture of anticipation and exhaustion, her dreams filled with music, laughter, and a son whose happiness was, she thought, finally within reach. The week unfurled in a flurry of wedding preparations, each day carrying new tasks for Elaine. She woke early every morning, checking her phone for updates from Eric or Olivia, hoping for a message inviting her to join a tasting or meet a vendor. Her calendar filled with reminders, final payment deadlines, delivery windows, and dress fittings. One afternoon, Elaine visited the venue, A stately old hall with stained glass windows and a garden she'd helped Eric and Olivia tour months ago. She dropped off another payment, the manager greeting her by name. "You must be so excited." "It's going to be a beautiful day," he said. Elaine smiled, pride welling up. "They've worked so hard. I'm just glad I can help." She lingered in the empty ballroom, imagining it transformed, candles glowing, music echoing, her son and new daughter-in-law spinning across the polished floor. At home, she spent hours assembling welcome bags for out-of-town guests, little boxes filled with chocolates, city maps, and handwritten notes. Elaine wrote, "We're so grateful to have you share in Eric and Olivia's joy." She hoped each guest would feel the warmth she'd poured into every detail. She emailed Olivia, offering to help with programs or place cards, but received only a brief, "Thanks, we've got it covered." In the evenings, Elaine spoke often with her own sister, Carol, who lived 2 states away. Carol listened to every update, sharing memories of their own wedding days and laughing about mishaps with veils and bouquets. "It'll all be worth it, Lainey," Carol said, voice kind. "Your love is in every corner of that day." Friday brought a surprise, a package from Olivia's mother, addressed to Mother of the Groom. Inside was a candle and a small card, "Thank you for all you've done." Elaine smiled, touched, and placed it on the mantel next to her collection of family photos. She called Eric, hoping to thank Olivia's family, but he was rushed. "Sorry, Mom, we're at the tailor's. I'll call you later, okay?" The line went dead. That evening, Elaine attended her dress fitting, the seamstress pinning and smoothing, chatting about colors and shoes. "Do you know where you'll be seated?" the seamstress asked, threading her needle. Elaine hesitated, realizing she hadn't heard about the seating chart. "I'm sure I'll find out soon," she replied, forcing a smile. At the market, she picked out wine and ingredients for the rehearsal dinner, her private tradition with Eric, one she'd imagined since he was a boy. The baker waved, "Your cake is almost ready." Elaine thanked her, picturing the little celebration, her hands busy making lists as she walked home. The days blended together in a whirl of errands, picking up Olivia's favorite tea, buying ribbon for bouquets, confirming the DJ's playlist with Eric via text. She sent Olivia links to family songs, hoping one might make the dance floor, but received only a polite, "We're going a different direction, thanks." Elaine reminded herself it was their day. Her job was to support, not control. One afternoon, Elaine stopped by Eric and Olivia's apartment to drop off a stack of addressed envelopes she'd offered to stamp. Olivia greeted her at the door, frazzled but polite. Boxes of invitations filled the living room. "Thank you, Elaine," Olivia said, ushering her inside. "We're just finishing the last of the invites. Eric's in the back, sealing envelopes." Elaine helped, careful not to ask too many questions. She chatted with Olivia's parents, who arrived to pick up extra supplies. The mood was upbeat, celebratory, and for a few moments, Elaine felt included, part of the team. Before leaving, Elaine glanced at the invitation pile, searching for her own envelope out of habit. She spotted her address on one, smiled to herself, and said her goodbyes. That night, Elaine set her phone on the table and brewed tea. She opened her calendar, counting down to the wedding, every square filled with a task or a hope. She watched the clock, waiting for Eric to call, her mind alive with all the moments she'd imagined sharing. She didn't notice, in the shuffle of envelopes, that her own invitation never made it into her bag. Elaine's anticipation built as the days ticked by. Every afternoon, she checked her mailbox with growing excitement, expecting to see the thick, embossed envelope addressed in Olivia's neat script. Each time, she found only circulars, bills, and the occasional card from Carol. Still, she told herself the invitation was surely on its way, delayed in the post, perhaps, or set aside to be hand-delivered for specialness. Elaine threw herself into last-minute tasks, determined to make everything perfect. She spent a morning at the florist double-checking the delivery time for the ceremony. She confirmed the caterer's head count, referencing her list of payments, and even picked up a special bottle of sparkling cider, Eric's favorite from childhood, for the toasts. She sent cheerful group texts to Eric and Olivia with photos of little details, the hand-tied napkin bundles, the boxes of chocolates for guests. Olivia replied once with a heart emoji. Eric simply sent a thumbs up. On Wednesday, Elaine received a group message from Olivia's parents about a family dinner at their home before the wedding. The note was polite, but there was no mention of her attending. She wondered if the real invitation would arrive in person. Carol called, asking, "Did you get your invite yet, Lainey?" Elaine laughed it off. "Oh, it'll turn up. I'm probably on the special list." She spent an afternoon choosing her shoes for the big day, settling on navy heels, pretty and sensible. The sales clerk admired her choice and asked about the occasion. Elaine beamed, telling the story of Eric's engagement, how she'd saved for years to give him the wedding he deserved. The clerk smiled. "He's lucky to have you." Elaine walked home feeling a glow of pride and hope. The city was buzzing as wedding weekend approached. Elaine coordinated with the seamstress to pick up her dress, now perfectly altered and pressed. She baked a batch of lemon bars, Eric's favorite, and placed them in a tin shaped like a heart. The baker called about the rehearsal cake, confirming the pickup time for Friday afternoon. Elaine checked her list, feeling a flutter of happiness. She imagined the night before the wedding, Eric and Olivia surrounded by friends, herself at the center of a small, grateful circle. That evening, Elaine called Eric. He answered on the third ring, breathless. "Hey, Mom. Sorry, can't talk long. We're meeting the DJ." Elaine said, "Just checking in, making sure everything's set. I haven't gotten my invitation yet, but maybe you can bring it by." Eric hesitated. "Oh, Olivia's handling those. I'll ask her." "Don't worry, everything's fine." Elaine smiled into the phone. "I can't wait to see you at the rehearsal. Love you." "Love you too, Mom," he said quickly, the words trailing off as he hung up. The next day, Elaine tidied her apartment, setting her dress and shoes out in anticipation. She reviewed the menu with the caterer, ordered a fresh corsage, and sent Olivia a text. "Let me know if you need anything for the rehearsal or ceremony. Happy to help with last touches." No reply. By Friday morning, the mailbox was still empty of any invitation. Elaine felt a flicker of doubt but brushed it away, busying herself with chores and calls. Carol texted a photo of her own wedding invitation. "Look what came today." Elaine forced a cheerful reply and changed the subject. That afternoon, Elaine picked up the rehearsal dinner cake and lemon bars, carefully tying them with ribbon. She laid out her blue dress, the navy heels, and a pair of pearl earrings. As dusk fell, she stood at her window, watching the city lights blink on, her phone cradled in her palm. She waited, patient and hopeful, convinced that her moment, the celebration she'd spent years dreaming about, was finally about to begin. Friday evening settled over the city, filling Elaine's apartment with the glow of streetlights and the faint sound of laughter from nearby patios. She stood by her window, watching the sun slip behind high-rises, her blue dress hanging on the closet door, the lemon bars boxed and ribboned on the kitchen counter. She checked her phone again, hopeful for a last-minute message, an address, a time, even just a note from Eric. The silence deepened with each passing minute. Elaine tried to occupy herself, bustling around her small kitchen. She set the table for two, out of habit, a place for her and Eric, just as they'd always done for birthdays, holidays, moments big and small. She reheated a bowl of soup, listening for the buzz of her phone, but it sat motionless, screen dark. She replayed Eric's hurried voice from their last call, searching for reassurance. Unable to sit still, Elaine decided to walk to the bakery, picking up a second loaf of bread, just in case. The staff greeted her with familiarity and warmth, asking about the big weekend. Elaine smiled, telling them the wedding was almost here. They wished her luck and sent her home with a few extra pastries, for good luck on the big day. As dusk fell, Elaine called Carol. Her sister's voice was gentle, concerned. "Are you sure you have the right date, Lainey? Maybe the invitation got lost." Elaine forced a laugh. "I'm sure it's just a mix-up. Eric will call, you'll see." Carol was quiet for a moment, then filled the silence with talk of flowers and weather. Returning home, Elaine opened her closet, smoothing the dress she'd chosen, remembering the day she bought it. She took the lemon bars and placed them in the fridge. The apartment felt unusually large, the ticking of the clock echoing in the quiet. She dusted family photos, straightened the small vase of flowers, and reread her calendar, every square filled with details of a celebration she was certain she would join. At 9, Elaine made tea and sat by her phone. She scrolled through photos of Eric as a child, laughing in the park, blowing out birthday candles, clinging to her hand in every frame. She sent Eric a final text, "Let me know when you're free tomorrow. I have something special for you both." The message marked as delivered, but no reply came. Unable to sleep, Elaine wandered through memories. Eric's first day of school, his graduation, the night he brought Olivia home for dinner. She remembered how proud she'd been, watching him grow, believing that every sacrifice she made would one day circle back as joy. As midnight neared, Elaine dimmed the lights, set her phone on the nightstand, and lay in bed, eyes open in the dark. She listened to the distant sound of cars, the faint laughter drifting up from the street, the silence of her own apartment pressing close. Morning came slowly, light creeping over the windowsill. Elaine rose early, showered, and dressed carefully, fixing her hair with the same care she'd given Eric on his first day of school. She set out the lemon bars and the box of pastries, placing them in a bag by the door. She waited, staring at the phone, hoping for a call or a text, some sign that the celebration would include her. As the city awakened, horns honked and neighbors bustled outside, Elaine's apartment remained still. The wedding day had arrived, but no invitation, no message, no instructions came. She glanced at her reflection in the hallway mirror, a mother dressed in blue, eyes bright with hope, holding a gift she still longed to give. The morning air buzzed with excitement outside Elaine's apartment. Cars honked, flower shops opened early, and church bells sounded in the distance. Elaine, in her blue dress and pearl earrings, waited by her window, the gift bag at her feet. She imagined the bustle at the venue. Florists unloading buckets of white roses, chefs rushing into kitchens, guests arriving in their finest clothes. She pictured Eric, straightening his tie in the mirror, Olivia laughing with her bridesmaids. Elaine checked her phone every few minutes, nerves jangling with every passing hour. At 9, she texted Eric, "Thinking of you both today. Hope everything is going beautifully. Love you." She put the phone down, willing herself not to stare at the screen. She tried to read, but the words swam. She watered her plants, adjusted the lace doily on her side table, folded and refolded the napkins she'd bought for her imagined table. Time crept forward. Elaine's neighbor, Mrs. Appleby, knocked to ask for a cup of sugar. She eyed Elaine's elegant outfit with a curious smile. "You look beautiful, dear. Going somewhere special?" Elaine smiled, brushing imaginary lint from her dress. "My son's wedding today," she said quietly, her voice uncertain. Mrs. Appleby clapped her hands together. "Oh, how wonderful! You must be so proud." Elaine nodded, a smile fixed on her lips, warmth and embarrassment blooming together. Back inside, Elaine reheated coffee, her mind spinning through what she'd do if the call came, how quickly she could grab her bag, flag a taxi, and reach the venue. She kept her shoes on, just in case. Noon came and went, the city bright with sunlight. Elaine set her phone on the kitchen counter, letting it ring out into the open air. She refreshed her email, searching for any last-minute details. Nothing. Her heart fluttered with hope and dread. Carol called just after lunch. "How is everything going, Lainey?" she asked, cautious. Elaine hesitated, smoothing her skirt. "No word yet. I'm sure I'll hear soon." Carol tried to reassure her, but Elaine felt a tremor of doubt. She changed the subject to Carol's grandkids, forcing herself to sound cheerful. She walked to the window, watching taxis glide down the street, imagining them full of wedding guests. She pictured the scene, tables covered in white linens, candles flickering, laughter ringing out. She whispered her own toast to the empty room, "To Eric and Olivia, may you always find your way back to each other." By mid-afternoon, Elaine grew restless. She checked her mailbox once more, almost laughing at her own hopefulness. Bills, advertisements, and a card from her old neighbor, no invitation. She lingered in the hallway, listening to distant music. Someone, somewhere, was celebrating. Inside, Elaine unpacked the lemon bars, placing them on a china plate. She sat at the kitchen table, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes on the clock. 5, then 6. The sun began to set, washing her apartment in gold. Elaine pressed a napkin to her lips, blinking back tears. As dusk fell, the city's energy softened. Elaine stood at her window, blue dress still perfect, phone still silent. She watched the lights twinkle on across the city, wishing she could see Eric and Olivia among the guests, wishing she could stand in the back and just witness their joy. Night settled in. Elaine changed into her robe, set her blue dress carefully back in the closet, and placed the lemon bars in the freezer. She washed her face, the silence of the apartment deep as ever. She sat on her bed, phone charging at her side, and wrote a simple note in her journal, "I hope it was beautiful." Then, as the city quieted, she let the tears come, quiet, careful, and alone. The next morning, Sunday sunlight crept through Elaine's blinds, painting bright rectangles across her quiet apartment. She woke early, sleep never quite taking her the night before. The blue dress hung untouched on her closet door, a silent witness to all her hope and effort. She dressed simply, folding the dress with careful hands, and set it in its garment bag, sliding it to the back of the closet. She made coffee, her movements slow, each gesture deliberate. The city outside was already awake, buses hissing, church bells ringing, families bustling to brunch. Elaine sipped her coffee at the kitchen table, phone close at hand. She opened her calendar, reading the reminders she'd written months ago, Eric's big day, pick up cake, hair at 9, and deleted them, one by one, her finger trembling over each square. After breakfast, she walked to the market for groceries, head down, sunglasses on. The florist smiled at her, holding out a handful of leftover roses. "Wedding this weekend. Thought you'd like some of the extras." Elaine smiled, accepting them gratefully, arranging them in a vase by the window. Back home, she checked her phone again. A text from Carol, "Thinking of you, Lainey. Call me if you want to talk." Elaine replied with a heart, then put the phone aside, not ready to speak. She took out her recipe box, baking a loaf of banana bread to fill the apartment with warmth. As she measured and stirred, she thought of all the meals she'd made for Eric, the birthdays and sick days and simple Tuesday nights, when love was an ingredient in every dish. At noon, Elaine heard the faint sound of laughter from the apartment next door. Mrs. Appleby's grandkids had come for a visit. Elaine smiled at the happy chaos, the way a family filled the air, their voices lifting through the walls. She spent the afternoon tidying her apartment, rearranging bookshelves, dusting family photos. She paused at one, Eric, aged 7, missing front teeth, arms slung around her neck, both of them grinning into the camera. She ran her thumb along the glass, remembering the day at the park, the way he'd asked for one more push on the swings, the way she'd promised always to be there for him. The lemon bars, untouched, sat in the freezer. Elaine wrapped a few in foil and left them by Mrs. Appleby's door. She wrote a small note, "Enjoy these with your family. Wishing you a sweet Sunday." It felt good, the simple act of giving. By evening, Elaine tried to read but found herself staring into space, lost in thought. She made a light dinner, set the table for one, and ate quietly, replaying moments from Eric's childhood in her mind. She wondered if he'd felt her absence at all, if, in the whirlwind of vows and dances and cake, he'd remembered the mother who'd made it all possible. As dusk turned to night, Elaine made a cup of tea and stood at her window, watching the city lights flicker on. She thought of the wedding, of laughter spilling through a room, of toasts and music and the embrace of a new family. She wished them well, silently and sincerely, hoping the day had been all they'd dreamed. Before bed, Elaine wrote a letter she'd never send. "Dear Eric and Olivia, I hope your day was filled with joy and love. I was with you in every detail, every hope, and every blessing. May you always find your way back to each other, even if I'm not there to see it. Love always, Mom." She tucked the letter in her drawer, a secret between herself and the quiet night. Then she turned out the light, letting her heart rest, if only for a little while. Monday came with a cool, steady rain, the city washed clean and the sky low and silver. Elaine awoke to the quiet patter on her windows, a gentle reminder that the world moves on, no matter how heavy the heart. She pulled on a sweater and made herself breakfast, humming an old tune that once made Eric laugh at the kitchen table. The song caught in her throat, but she finished it, determined to keep small comforts alive. She called Carol after breakfast. Her sister answered on the first ring, her voice full of warmth and worry. "Lainey, how are you holding up?" Elaine hesitated, then allowed herself honesty. "I'm sad, Car. I won't pretend I'm not. But I think I'll be okay." Carol listened, offering small encouragements, stories of her own children's milestones, her voice a lifeline across the miles. After they hung up, Elaine decided to get out of the apartment. She put on her raincoat and walked to the community center, where she'd once volunteered for the library's reading program. The staff greeted her warmly, remembering her love of books and her gentle way with children. "We've missed you, Mrs. Foster. Would you like to help with the after-school club this week?" Elaine agreed, her heart lifting at the thought of giving her time and care to others. That afternoon, Elaine organized her closets, donating old clothes to charity and setting aside a box of Eric's childhood things, baseball trophies, spelling bee ribbons, hand-painted Mother's Day cards. She sorted them carefully, tracing memories with her fingertips. The ache of absence softened as she remembered the years when she and Eric had been each other's whole world. She spent an hour writing thank-you notes to the vendors, florist, caterer, bakery, thanking them for their kindness, even though she'd never seen the big day. Each note was an act of grace, her way of letting go. At the bakery, she picked up a loaf of bread and left an envelope of lemon bars for the staff. "For your kindness and good wishes," she wrote. Back at home, she tidied her living room and set out a new book, determined to read for pleasure again. She made soup for dinner and invited Mrs. Appleby to join her. They shared stories of their children, laughter softening the edges of loneliness. Mrs. Appleby confided her own worries about her distant son, and Elaine felt a sense of kinship, a reminder that she wasn't alone in her longing. That evening, Elaine spent time with the photos on her shelves. She rearranged them, creating a new centerpiece, a frame of her and Eric, smiling in the sun, and one of herself as a young woman, vibrant and independent. She looked at her own face and whispered, "You still matter." Before bed, Elaine wrote in her journal, "Grief is not the end. There's still kindness left to give, and days left to fill with meaning. I choose to heal, even when it hurts." As the rain continued through the night, Elaine allowed herself hope. She wasn't sure when, or if, Eric would call. But she knew she'd wake tomorrow, ready to offer warmth and care to a world that needed it, even if her own invitation had never come. The week stretched on, each day gentler than the last. Elaine kept busy with small acts, volunteering at the library's after-school club, tending to her window garden, and joining Mrs. Appleby for tea every afternoon. She read stories to children, their bright eyes and questions drawing laughter from corners of her heart she thought had gone quiet. Each day, she found a new rhythm, filling the spaces once reserved for Eric's calls and wedding plans. Thursday brought a soft knock at her door. She opened it to find a young woman from the building, her arms full of groceries and a fussy toddler in tow. "I'm so sorry," the woman said, cheeks flushed. "Would you mind watching Henry for an hour? I need to get something from the pharmacy." Elaine welcomed them in, setting Henry up with blocks and crayons. For that hour, her living room was alive with giggles and squeals, Henry's sticky fingers clinging to her as he showed off each wobbly tower. The mother returned, relieved and grateful, pressing a loaf of sweet bread into Elaine's hands. "You saved my day," she said, voice thick with emotion. Elaine smiled, feeling seen. That evening, Elaine sat with Mrs. Appleby and a group of neighbors in the courtyard, sharing stories and slices of banana bread. Someone brought a guitar, and soon the air filled with song. Elaine let herself join in, her voice blending with the group, no longer tentative but sure. For a moment, the ache in her heart eased, replaced by the warmth of belonging. Friday arrived with a letter in her mailbox, no return address. Inside was a photo of Eric and Olivia on their wedding day, smiling under a shower of petals, their faces radiant. There was a note, "Thank you for everything, Mom. I hope you can forgive us." Elaine read it twice, her hands trembling, tears brimming but not falling. She traced Eric's handwriting, feeling a complicated tide of sorrow, pride, and release. She pressed the photo into her journal, next to the letter she'd never sent. She didn't call. Instead, she walked to the market, bought flowers for her table, and chatted with the florist about spring bulbs. She passed by the bakery, waving at the staff who now greeted her by name, and left a small bundle of lemon bars for the delivery drivers. "A little sweetness for the road," she wrote. That night, Elaine wrote in her journal by the light of her bedside lamp. "There are losses we cannot change and choices we may never understand. But kindness remains, sometimes not where we first give it, but where it is needed next. I gave what I could. I am still myself." As she settled into bed, the city outside glimmered with new possibilities. Elaine's heart, still bruised, beat steady with hope. She knew some wounds would remain, but her days would not be empty. She had a place in the world, not just as someone's mother, but as herself, a neighbor, a friend, a giver of small joys. Tomorrow, she would rise again, ready to welcome the light.